China is warning countries not to cut trade deals with the U.S. at its expense. Beijing has accused Washington of using tariffs as a bargaining chip, pressuring partners to limit their trade with China in return for exemptions. For more analysis on those trade tensions, we have Wendy Cutler. She joins us from Washington, D.C. She's vice president at Asia Society Policy Institute. She's also former negotiator in the Office of U.S. Trade Representative. Ms. Cutler, we just heard that Beijing suggesting that countries not cut deals with the U.S. at the expense of China. So something that might have been confined just to trade or tariffs, increasingly it is very difficult to compartmentalize different concerns that different countries might have.
Well, exactly. I mean, look, the Trump administration right now is negotiating with countries during this 90-day pause and is making a lot of demands to these countries in order for the U.S. to lift the new tariffs that were just imposed. Part of the demands are going to be in the area of addressing what we call in the United States the China challenge. And that is clearly going to present difficulties for a number of countries, particularly those in Southeast Asia that are being squeezed by both the two largest economies in the world, the U.S. and China.
But it's not just Southeast Asia. Any country, if they knew that threats from Washington on reciprocal tariffs was indeed confined just to the China challenge, they might, in fact, be able to placate the United States by making the right moves. The problem is no one seems to know who wants what, to what degree.
Well, I think that's a bit of an overstatement. Negotiations are going on now. Progress is being made. There are clearly some huge challenges in these negotiations, but according to the Trump administration, they're going well thus far.
Okay, so we mentioned the 90-day pause, but that was the 9th of April. So we count in roughly about 70 to 79 days until that deadline hits on tariffs on the 9th of July. You've got, according to the White House, around 75 countries who have made their approach to Washington to find some kind of negotiated settlement on those tariffs. So do you see, what kinds of deals do you see in 78 days, 75 countries, regions, territories?
Well, as a former trade negotiator, I do not see 75 agreements being reached. In my view, based on my experience, maybe we'll see a handful being reached, and maybe it'll just be reached in what we call in principle, with the details and to be fleshed out. The Trump administration keeps claiming that they're making progress with many countries. And let's be honest, a lot of countries are not happy with the reciprocal tariffs that were assigned them. It's going to create a lot of hardship to their economies. So they do have an interest in trying to reach an accommodation with the Trump administration over this 90-day period.
What shape might that accommodation take? Entirely commercial deals, bilateral deals, or some kind of agreement that is based on everyone agreeing on adhering to the same set of rules?
These are going to be bilateral deals, and I think each deal will have some common elements, but there'll also be tailored commitments to fit the nature of the bilateral relationship. So my understanding is the administration is going to be asking for concessions in a number of different areas, including market access, lowering tariffs for the United States, as well as getting rid of a lot of these non-tariff measures that have been presenting obstacles to trade between the United States and the targeted country. U.S. requests will also involve, as we said, addressing what's called the China challenge with respect to trade and investment with China, and trying to really discipline any circumvention that's happening by Chinese companies in third countries in order to avoid U.S. tariffs. The U.S. may also be asking for demands with respect to currency or other financial matters, as well as economic security matters. But also, as you mentioned, it will have a commercial aspect to it. So I expect that countries will announce further huge investments into the United States and also further purchases of U.S. agriculture, energy, and other products in order to get the U.S. bilateral trade deficit down with the country in question.
For us, for example, we speak in abstract about what happens in these negotiations, but you have spent almost 3 decades either as diplomat or negotiator in the U.S. trade, in the office of the U.S. Trade Representative. The logistics of this, what happens when we hit the 9th of July? We're all in the process of negotiation. Those that are, those that aren't, those that get some kind of halfway deal at that point. What happens on July 9th?
Well, the administration is going to have to make certain decisions and group countries together, I think, in certain baskets. So there will be countries where we've either finalized a deal or announced a deal in principle. And my sense is then that the reciprocal tariffs would be lifted. The question is, and I don't know the answer to this, would they be lifted only up to, would the 10% universal tariff remain? And, that's unclear. Now, there are other countries maybe where we just even we have not had time to engage with them. That would be another bucket. And maybe there'll be another bucket of countries where progress is being made, but negotiations have not been finalized. And the administration at that point will need to decide, does it reimpose tariffs for all of those countries that have not reached a deal, or does it postpone and delay the 90-day period for countries that have been negotiating in good faith or countries with whom we just haven't had time to sit down and negotiate with? That will be a decision that will need to be made closer to the 90-day period. And I can tell you, as a negotiator, you would not at this point want to hint at any extension of the 90-day period, because that would take the pressure off the negotiations, and that would not be in the U.S. interest right now.
And final question here. Now, a standout in terms of reacting to that pressure, China and potentially the European Union. China has hit back with its own tariffs. For other countries, there's much less space and weight to do the same. When small countries or smaller countries negotiate with the United States on these potential tariffs, do they have any leverage? Final question.
I think they have some leverage. I think it's easy for countries to say, the U.S. is strong arming us. We have nothing. We can't get anything out of these. I think that these countries bring leverage to the table. In particular, the United States, the Trump administration wants to show that this trade policy is working. So they are going to be under pressure to negotiate and finalize as many deals as possible during those 90 days. And I think the other countries recognize that and may see an opening to at least achieve some of their objectives as well in the negotiation.
Thanks so much for joining us. Wendy Cutler, Vice President at Asia Society Policy Institute.